Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. If you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up or commenting below. If you want to see more of my videos, press the subscribe button and click on the bell for notifications. If you need any Stampin' Up! Products to make these cards, you can visit my online store and the link is in the description box below. When you purchase Stampin' Up! Products through me, you can earn free products. Check out my current customer appreciation products on my blog, and the link is listed below in the description. Today I'd like to share with you my November 2021 artisan projects using the Peaceful Cabin stamp set and coordinating products. These two cards use blending in two different but also similar ways. And so I'm excited to share with you those techniques, as well as give you a fun tip on using the snowy white specialty paper and getting a little bit of glimmer on them. So let's go ahead and get started making these cards. So before I begin, I do want to just talk you through some of the products that I'll be using. Let's start with the stamp set and the coordinating dies. So this is the Peaceful Cabin stamp set. It has a really beautiful image of a cabin, this fun fence, and then this is one image right here, these three trees together. And so we'll be using those today on the card, as well as the cabin dies. And these dies do coordinate with the images, so they will cut them out. And then it also has some dies that will cut out some extra images, such as these larger pine trees in the background, and then these smaller, more skinny pine trees. And they're really fun coordinating shapes. So they're not exactly all the same. And I like that about this die set. So another product that is part of this suite, it's called the Peaceful Place Suite. And it is the Peaceful Place Specialty Designer Series paper. Now it's called specialty paper because it has some silver foiling on one side. Now it is a 12 by 12 pack of paper, and you're going to get 2 of each sheet. And so it's a full 12 sheet pack. I'm going to show you the 6 sheets, but they're in a 6 by 6 size, just so because it's easier for me to show you on screen. So some really pretty patterns. Again, it's all silver foiled on one side, and the colors are very monochromatic. You have silver, gray, and white, and black. And so it's just a really pretty paper pack. Then on the other side, you have some very basic shapes, some fun patterns. This is a really fun one, and I've seen it colored with all different types of coloring options. So just some really beautiful paper. There is another paper product that's part of the suite, and it is the snowy white velvet sheets. And it does have a velvet texture to them, and it's just a really pretty product to add to your cards to just make them a little more special. I also love the Timber 3D embossing folder that is part of this suite. I'm not sure if you can see the detail that is on here, but it has a very wood grain feeling. Let me show you on my cards. You can see it right here along the edge of both cards because I loved it so much I used it on both. So that's a really great product that's part of the suite as well. And then you also have this subtle shimmer sequins, which I've used just on the cards kind of up in the sky where the snow might be falling. So just a really fun, they come in different colors, including white, off-white, silver, those types of colors, just to be a very subtle part to your cards. You can see them on my cards there. So to begin today, I wanted to start with the blending for these cards. And you'll see here that we have 2 different blended backgrounds. This card is blended onto the Designer Series paper. So this is the paper here. It's white with silver foiling, and I've just used a blending brush and some ink and blended in a blue sky. For this card, I started on some balmy blue ink. And so what's happened is even though I've used the same color ink for both, because it has that different color underneath, we're going to get a little bit different of a darker color along the edge. But what makes this so nice is that you only have to blend one color, but you get a two-toned sky there. And so we're going to be doing that as well. So let's begin with those two blends, and then we'll move on to some other details of the card. So I am blending with Misty Moonlight. I really love this dark blue color. Just going to pick it up with one of my blending brushes, begin off my paper, and then blend right onto my paper. And the nice thing about the blending brushes is that it's just a really smooth product to add the ink to your cardstock, or to your designer series paper in this case. When you're ready, you can go ahead and pick up more ink and then just start again in the same place. And that's going to build up that nice dark sky at the top. And then as you blend it down into the rest of the paper, you're going to lighten it up a little bit. And you can repeat this as many times as you want to get a nice dark sky there. I think I'm going to go one more time, just to the top, just to really make that top nice and dark. There we go. Now, because we're working on something that has been embossed with some silver foiling, you may want to just take a tissue or paper towel and just pick up any excess ink that might be sitting on top of that silver foil. All right, so that piece is done. Let's go ahead and move to the balmy blue piece. Again, we're using the exact same color here. And we're wanting to keep this area here open with just the balmy blue. So we are going to blend the top and the sides. I'm using a nice big piece here so that I can hold on to the bottom and I don't have to worry about blending that. But again, you want to make sure you leave the open area here where the balmy blue is going to show through. So just blend those down and into that color. Maybe a little bit at the bottom, but keep one area open and free of color. Okay, let's just do a little darker at the top. A little bit on the sides. All right, so you'll get something like this. And you can do this with so many different colors. Just choose a lighter cardstock color and then blend with a darker ink color that kind of coordinates, and you're going to get a really quick and easy two-toned blend. Okay, so now that we have done the blending for this background, let's go ahead and do the stamping for this card. So I'm using Evening Evergreen, and I have the tree image from the Peaceful Cabin stamp set. I'm gonna go ahead and ink that up, and I'm gonna stamp it on some scratch paper, and I'm gonna keep the trees near the top of that paper. Okay, so I'll get something like this, and then I can use the coordinating dies to cut that out. And just gonna layer that right over, and then add a little washi tape to hold it in place. Just like that, and I'll be right back. So it will look something like this when you're done. I did want to add a little more color to the trees. So with a water painter, I'm going to add a little bit of water inside the stamped image. And I'm not going to use any extra ink. I'm just going to use the ink that's already been stamped. So on some scratch paper, I'm going to add just a couple drops of water so that my bristles get wet. And then I'm just going to kind of gently add that water to my stamped image. I'm kind of just tapping it, and you'll see that it kind of picks up that ink color and just fills in the stamped image with just a little more color. And I really like that look. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for the other two trees. So if you look closely, you'll notice that I didn't just do a full wash. I did want to have some white areas still on that tree, so it looks like it's snowed. And so just be really careful not to add too much water. Okay, so the next element that we're going to do for this card are these dark trees in the background. So what I'm going to do is on some evening evergreen cardstock, I've got that same die that cuts out the tree stamped. And then on the inside of that die, I'm going to add this. There are two dies that fit inside of this outline. We're going to go ahead and add them, and they're going to cut out these little holes that are here in the die cut. So to do that, you can just place them right inside. So I'm just going to go ahead, add this, add the dies on the inside of that cutout, and then I can just run this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. So then when you remove this, you have this really fun detailed die here. And you can just pop off any of these holes here that didn't come out. You can use this, or there is a die brush that's really great at removing all these little holes as well. So it's just a little brush that pops all those out nice and fast. So those two elements are ready. And then we're also going to cut out from the snowy white velvet sheet these skinny trees here. There are 3 different sizes, so we'll cut one from each size. And then we're going to add a little bit of Wink of Stella to them for a little bit of shine. So go ahead and cut these out. If you want, you can add some adhesive sheets to the back of these dies here. The nice thing is that you do get some thick areas, and so I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive to add these to my card. But make sure that if you're going to use the adhesive sheets that you add it before you cut it out. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, so now I think we're ready to get started putting our card together. I do have a card base of thick basic white cardstock, and on the top of that I'm going to add some of that embossed white cardstock, and this has been embossed with the Timber 3D embossing folder. I'm going to add just a little liquid adhesive to the back. This I've cut to just 1/8 smaller than my cardstock. I want just a nice thin border all the way around. So you'll get something like that. Then we're going to begin by adding our designer series paper, and this just gets placed right in the center. I am going to use liquid adhesive again, just because this has such a good texture to it. I want to make sure that it adheres nicely to that, and I like liquid adhesive for that type of texture. So I'm going to smooth that out from the inside just to make sure I don't get any bubbles. Then I'm just going to start layering some of these other elements. So I'm going to begin by adding my die cut trees over the designer series paper trees. And I think I'm going to place them right about here, maybe just a little bit lower. And I do need to trim them just a little bit on each side before adding. So just with my paper trimmers, I'm going to trim this one right by the tree, and probably the same for this one. Add a little adhesive to the bottom, and then place it on your card. Okay, I like that the tops are a little bit free to kind of open and give some dimension. Then we're going to add our stamped trees. They're going to go to the bottom of our card, but I think I'm going to move them over just a little bit so that I get most of this tree here on my card. So I'm going to start by trimming this just slightly. So this tree I'm just going to trim just a little bit off on that right side. Oh, you know, I should use my paper trimmer because that was not straight. So I'm going to line this up and trim right there. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim again. And I think it's going to be, well, let's see. How much do I need to cut off? just the smallest amount, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. So flip that over, and just a really tiny amount on that side. So the final cut is 3 3/4 is the width of that piece. And it's going to go all the way down to the bottom of that designer series paper. So I'm covering up the bottom of that there. Okay, so you'll get something that looks like that. Now, depending on how much space there, this could come up a little bit higher if you wanted, but I do want to cover that all the way. So it's going to be a little different from my original card because of that. So I'm going to add a little adhesive to the bottom, and then I'm going to pop up the top with some dimensionals. And that's just going at the top of those trees there. And that's just going to make them so that they kind of pop from the card. So that's going at the bottom. Okay, so you'll get something that looks like that. Then I have already stamped and die cut with the Tasteful Label dies a greeting, and that's going to go, I'm going to move it over just a little bit. I'm going to go near the bottom of my card, just like that. And then I'm going to take the snowy white trees, add a little adhesive to the back, and add these around the greeting. So the large one I'm going to place on the left side, like that. And then I have 2 small ones on the right side. I might actually add one of the small ones to the left, since this one has a little more space than the first card. Maybe something like that. There we go. Let's slide that one in just a little bit. Okay. Then to add a little fun glimmer to the snowy white velvet sheets, you can use your Wink of Stella. And I'm just going to unscrew it just a little bit so that it flows a little easier. Then on some scratch paper, just make sure it's flowing and I'm getting some of that fun color. And you don't have to do this to the whole thing. You're just wanting a little bit of glimmer in the center of those trees. Can you see that shine? Let me try to get a little bit more coming out. There we go. Now it might make your snowy white have a little bit of an off-white look to it. That's just because you've got that glimmer inside and it's not an exact white color. Okay, so it's added a little bit of shine to those trees. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this and add the sequins at the same time as my second card, but this card is mostly done. So let's go ahead and move to card number 2. All right, so for card number 2, we're going to stamp the cabin in Memento black ink. And this is just going to give us a really good outline, and then we can do some watercoloring to add color to our image. I have another just scratch piece of paper, and this is going to get stamped. You're going to want to keep it near the top and to the left so that you get a little extra cardstock on the right side. Then you're going to take your coordinating die and with a little bit of washi tape, just line it up. And you do want to be careful because it does cut out a couple of these openings that are part of the image. So right here, it's going to create a hole, and right over here as well. So let's go ahead and run this through our machine and be right back. Okay, so you can see here those holes it cuts. It was a little bit pushed to the left on this side, so you can see how it got really close to those poles on the cabin. And so now we're going to add some of our coloring. I've got some balmy blue, and I'm going to use my water painter again, squeezing a little bit of water into that color to really lighten it up. And I'm just going to add it to the snowy areas, kind of where the black shadow from the stamped image is. Now you do want to be careful with your Memento black ink because it can bleed a little bit. So don't add too much water to this image. So just kind of brush on a couple areas just to add a little bit of that blue to that snow. Okay, so it is really light, and that's what you want. So you may not be able to see that color on my paper. So go ahead and clean your brush just with a little water and on a paper towel. And then I'm going to use soft suede for the inside of my cabin. So add a little water to that, and then use a really light wash and begin by adding color lightly. And then you can go back in and just darken it up a little bit. But again, you don't want to add too much water to your Memento black ink. Make sure down here by the snow that you keep the snow line intact, that you don't get brown in your snow. Nobody wants brown snow. We want nice white snow. Okay, so then you can also move that color into the darker areas. You may think that you don't need to, but it is good to have a little bit of color wash there, just so it feels like it's all part of the same house. And then I did add a little bit of color down on these poles here. Again, and that just makes it feel like it's part of the house. And a little bit on the other side. Okay. Don't forget about the chimney. Add a little color up there too. All right, so that cabin is all done. So I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and put it off to the side. And I'm going to do some fun stamping and embossing on the background. I have two different embossing colors that I'm using. I'm going to do a silver embossing with the trees, and that just kind of makes it so it coordinates really nicely with the silver foil on the designer series paper. And then I'm going to do white embossing for some snow. So it's really important when you've done a blend, you've got all this ink, and ink's going to hold on to embossing powder. And so you want to make sure that you add a lot of embossing buddy to your cardstock so that you don't have that happen. I'm going to start with my trees. So I've got my Versamark and I have my trees here. Gonna make sure they're inked up really well with Versamark. You can see that I've just really powdered up my cardstock. Can you see all that powder on there? So I'm gonna stamp these two over here on the right side with good pressure. And then I'm going to ink up this single one and stamp that a little higher actually. So this one I'm inking and I'm going to stamp that one up a little higher. Okay, I'll show you, see if you can see how that is with the Versamark. So for my last tree, I really want it to be up high and I want it to be this biggest one right here. But my problem is that if I stamp it, I'm also going to get this tree here in the stamp. So I'm going to actually cover up those 3 trees I've already stamped and maybe do it at an angle that matches that tree right there. Then I'm going to ink up that center tree and stamp it just a little higher than my other one, just like that. Okay, so you'll get something like that. Does that make sense as to how I covered that? So I covered it at an angle, and so then when I stamped that other tree, it didn't stamp on any of these, and it filled in the space. So now I'm going to add this to my silver embossing powder, tap off the excess, and heat it up with my heat tool. Don't you just love watching that silver heat emboss get all shiny? It really is one of my favorite things. Okay, so I noticed that I didn't get a lot of silver here at the top of my two trees right there. And so I'm going to fix that by adding some snowflakes to that area. So I'm going to go ahead and actually add some more embossing buddy to this top area where I'm going to place my snowflakes. And I'm going to begin adding snowflakes right over those trees. And that's just going to kind of fill in that space there where I should have had some more embossing. Okay, maybe do a couple snowflakes a little low on this, between these trees too. So I'll give you a close-up. So I've added some snowflakes there. And then the other ones I'll probably just kind of keep to the top. Maybe one right there in the center. So this is just totally up to you how you add those snowflakes. So I just filled the top in with snowflakes. This one I did it more in a line. So I kind of had a line from the top to the from the top left to that middle of the top on the right. So now I'm going to add white embossing powder to the top of that and heat it up. Use your Stampin' chalk marker and just add some more dots where you want a little bigger snowflake. So I definitely think that adds a little bit more to those snowflakes using that chalk marker. That's a little tip there. So now that that piece is ready for our card, we can start putting our card together. I'm using that Timber 3D embossing folder again for a fun background. Just placing that on my cardstock of thick basic white. Then I'm going to add this right to the center. So you can just eyeball that and then bring it down and line it up with the markings on the bottom as well. And then open that up and smooth it all out. Then I'm going to add my cabin here, and we can have the cabin go all the way across our card. So you can place this really wherever you want. I think I'm going to bring it up just a little bit so that it can kind of cover up this bottom of the tree there. So I'm going to add that with some adhesive. And then add some dimensionals at the top. That just gives your card the dimension where you want it, but then it keeps things flat where you don't need the dimension. So I'm going to place it right about there. Okay, I'll give you a close-up. So it's right below that silver tree. Then I'm going to take my paper snips and right along this edge. I can feel the edge of that cardstock. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut right along that edge. I was just sliding it right there. And I'm going to do the same to this side. So then at the bottom here, I'm going to cover up some of this excess blue with some of the fun patterns that are in the Designer Series paper pack. So go ahead and add as many patterns as you want here. I've got this one is about, I think it's 3/4 of an inch. And that's just going to go right at the bottom, like that. And I've already cut it down to the right size. And then this one is 1/2 inch, and it's going to go right over the top. Just like that. I should add my little snowy white trees that I have cut out. little bit of adhesive in the larger areas. So I've added those trees to both sides of my card. I've got the large one on the left and the two smaller ones on the right. And then you're just going to add a little wink of Stella, just like we did before on the other card, to the tops of those trees. I'll give you a close-up of that. And then we'll take the greeting that I've cut out with one of the seasonal labeled dies, and I'm just going to place that below the cabin and centered on the card. And that does have dimensionals underneath there, just to give it a nice pop. All right, so our card is now, so both of our cards are now ready for the sequins. And I'm just going to add them with some of the liquid glue, and I'm just going to place a little dot wherever I want to add a sequin. So I've got two there, maybe one here, and then a couple there. I'll give you a close-up. And then for this one, I want to create kind of a little snowflake feeling with the sequins. So I'm gonna just kind of place them randomly coming across my card like that. And then maybe a couple over here on the left below the greeting. One thing I like about the liquid glue is that if it dries, it's still tacky. And so I'm not worried about those glue dots drying on me before I get a sequin on them. What I like to do is take the sequins and pour just a little bit into the lid, and then I'm able to pick out the ones that I want with my Take a Pick tool. I also like to undo the pointy end, and that's going to help me keep the sequin on my card. So for this one, I want to focus on using just the silver sequins. So I'm going to pick up a couple different sizes and add them over the glue dot, or the dot of glue. So there are at least two sizes that I can tell. We'll place a small one there. You do have some shiny silver and then more of a matted silver. And so you can decide which ones you want to use. I'm using this shiny silver. Oh, that one's a matted. That one had two stuck to it. So I'll show you the difference between the two. So here's the shiny and here's the matted silver. So then for this one, because I want to have kind of a snowflake feeling, I'm going to keep with all of the white. So there's a white iridescent, and then there's more of like a flat white. And either of those two whites are going to work really nicely with my card because of the just this kind of that snowflake feeling that we're looking for, or I'm looking for. Okay. So I'm just looking for the ones that are kind of turned the right way so that I can pick them up nice and easy and add them to my card. And I'm using the different shapes and sizes. So I've got a small one there, and then maybe I'll do another large one right here. And then let's see, we'll do another large one up on the white. Okay. So you can kind of see those. And then I have the two down there. I'm going to use an iridescent white. And then if I can find a small one, I might use a small one here as well. So these cards are now all done. I hope you enjoyed watching me create these fun and beautiful cards using the Peaceful Place collection of products from Stampin' Up! If you're interested in getting written instructions or seeing close-up images of these cards, you can visit my blog, creativechelsea.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a creative day. Bye.